Alright, what's up everybody? It's your boy Akeen and welcome to today's vlog. Here to give you a recap of what we saw last night for the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft. Like many other seasons, this was another interesting first round in which it actually impacted 5 trades within the first round, and I'm very excited to see what happens for the next upcoming rounds. And the next 2 rounds is going to be tonight starting at 7 o'clock on ESPN. So excited, but it had a great overall first round in my personal opinion, and the winners of the first round belong to the Cleveland Browns because they did an outstanding job. But first, let's talk about the first overall selection belonging to the Houston Texans. They actually ended up selecting Jadeveon Clowney. Now, he was the first defensive player selected first overall since Mario Williams back in 2006. I still think this was I have to disagree with the selection, but I have to respect it because they did go with the best available player, and he is the best player entering this year's draft. Now, he's a great player coming out of South Carolina, and he was a major upgrade for that defensive line, another upgrade for that depth chart overall. And with him and J.J. Watt at the other side of defensive end, that is going to be very, very scary. I'm very because I think teams need to be concerned about both these two players. They're definitely going to get behind the line of scrimmage and wreck hell in that line of scrimmage with these two players together. And I think that Whitney Mercilus, who had 7 sacks last season, I think he's going to be dropping back more and be used more at the outside linebacker position and not used in the 3-point stance. Now, Jadeveon Clowney is a great athlete, very versatile. He also played at the 3-point stance in the 4-3 defense, and he can even play standing up as an outside linebacker. So the Houston Texans can use him in different schemes on the defensive side. At the 3rd overall pick, belonging to the Jacksonville Jaguars, they actually picked up Blake Bortles out of UCF, just 2 hours away from Jacksonville, his backyard. Now, Blake Bortles is a good quarterback who has the most potential out of all the quarterbacks entering this year's draft. I understand the Jacksonville Jaguars going with the quarterback, but I think this was a bad pick. I think they should have went with Johnny Manziel out of Texas A&M because he's more of a dual threat, and he would definitely spread that offense around, running the football as well as throwing the football. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars don't have too much talent on the offensive side, so Blake Bortles is going to be struggling a lot his rookie season. That's just my personal opinion, but I still see the potential in him to become a star in the National Football League. At pick number 4, the Cleveland Browns actually traded that selection for a 1st rounder and a 5th rounder to the Buffalo Bills, and this was a great trade. So the Bills actually had the 4th overall selection, and they picked Sammy Watkins out of Clemson. This was an excellent pickup, and because of this selection, I'm calling it out right now. Sammy Watkins is going to be the 2014 Offensive Rookie of the Year because of the talent they lack at the second and the wide receiver. Also, due to the fact that the 49ers actually traded to Buffalo to pick up Steve Johnson. So Steve Johnson is actually no longer with the team. So Sammy Watkins is going to have to automatically be that #1 target for E.J. Manuel and that offense. At number 5, Khalil Mack, he was actually selected by the Oakland Raiders. I think that was a good selection. Now, I'm going to jump things off at pick number 8. Now, the Cleveland Browns traded to they actually traded up to with Minnesota. They traded with the Buffalo Bills from pick number 4 to pick number 9, and before they had pick number 9, they decided to trade it up one more selection to go at number 8, and their 1st overall selection went with Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State. Now, this was an interesting pickup. At first my jaw just dropped when I saw it. I couldn't believe that they did not go with the quarterback with this selection. But I'm going to explain things later on in this particular blog. Justin Gilbert's a great athlete, and I think he could become a great tandem with Joe Hayden on the opposite of him. And I think that helped out that secondary, especially with the loss of T.J. Ward, who is now a Denver Bronco. So I have to respect this particular selection because of what they did with this later on in the first round. But the only thing I disagree with is that they traded up to pick up Justin Gilbert from the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings would have went with Justin Gilbert at pick number 8 and switched up at pick number 9. And what the Browns actually gave up, they gave up a 5th rounder, and I don't think it was really worth trading up one slot for a 5th rounder to pick up Justin Gilbert. I do not think Gilbert would have been selected by the Minnesota Vikings. I had Minnesota either going with the outside linebacker or a quarterback with their 1st overall selection. And speaking of Minnesota, they picked at number 9. They went with outside linebacker Anthony Anthony Barr out of UCLA. I think he become a good pass rusher because they no longer have Jared Allen, who is now a Chicago Bear. So he's going to have to step it up this season along with Roberson as well as Everson Griffin. Both these two, Brian Roberson and Griffin, they're decent players at defensive end, but they need a more of a premier pass rusher, and Anthony Barr can be that guy working on a good linebacker tandem with Chad Greenway. I think that was a pretty good pick overall. Now I'm going to skip things all the way up to pick number 16, which was a confusing selection for me, belonging to the Dallas Cowboys. Now I mentioned before their defense was horrendous, 30th in the league against the pass and 27th in the league against the run. So obviously everybody thought that they were going to go the defensive side with their first selection, but they actually ended up picking up Zach Martin out of Notre Dame at offensive tackle. And I don't understand this approach in this one. They were probably thinking a better offense makes a better defense overall approach. I don't really understand why Jerry Jones and company went with this particular selection when they should have addressed the defense. Now, yes, they did pick up Henry Melton out of the Chicago Bears and signed him, but he's still coming back from a torn ligament in his knee, and they still need some help in the secondary. I think they could have went with a cornerback with this one, like Darqueze Dennard, or even help out in the secondary at the next level in the secondary at safety with Calvin Pryor or even Clinton Dix. I disagree with this selection. I don't know why they went to the offensive side first instead of going to the defense, but we still have 6 more rounds to go with this year's draft. Hopefully they can recover with this selection. Now I'm going to also jump things off to pick number 20, belonging to the Arizona Cardinals. They actually traded up with the they actually had to trade up with the with the St. Louis, the New Orleans Saints, and New Orleans actually selected Brandon Cooks out of Oregon State. I think that was a great selection. And for the Arizona Cardinals, they picked up Deion Buchanan out of Washington State. I think this was an excellent selection. Some people might think this was a reach. Others might also, because they believe that he's more of a second rounder. But I think this is a first round talent, and I'm calling it again. He's going to be my defensive rookie of the year this upcoming season. This kid has great ball skills. He can definitely swat the ball away to give some pass breakups. He can even support the run, cause some fumbles, and I think he's a passionate and developed player. He shows a lot of appreciation to the game. I even saw him crying with his mother. He was so happy for this selection, just like the other players, but I just saw more passion with Deion Buchanan. I think this was going to be a great addition for the Arizona defense. And let's not forget about Tyrann Mathieu. He should be coming back from a knee injury. And let's not forget about Patrick Peterson. That's going to be a great secondary, a young secondary in the National Football League that everybody needs to look out for, especially in the NFC West Division. Jumping off to pick number 22, belonging to the Cleveland Browns, who had picked 26 but jumped up to 22, and that's when they picked up their quarterback, and Johnny Manziel out of Texas A&M. I think overall within this first round, the winners of this first round is the Cleveland Browns, because they still had 2 selections. They have another first round selection in next year's draft, and I think that's a great pick with Johnny Manziel being picked all the way down to 22, because that means they don't have to pay him as much money as had they picked him at number 4 overall. Now they got a good cornerback, and they still have plenty of options to pick up at the wide receiver position to work opposite of Josh Gordon. The Cleveland Browns are actually on the right track, and just like in the movie Draft Day, the Cleveland Browns did a great job. Thumbs up to this team. They did an outstanding job. I still disagree with trading the 5th round pick to go to number 8 overall, but I still think they still had some good pickups, and they could still pick up a great wide receiver in the 2nd round of this year's draft. They're probably going to be aiming towards Allen Robinson out of Penn State. That's just my suggestion with that particular selection. And with the final selection, it was actually belonged to the Seattle Seahawks, but they decided to trade with the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota actually gave up their 2nd round pick of this year's draft as well as their 4th round selection, and they ended up picking up Teddy Bridgewater out of Louisville. I think this was a great addition. Another quarterback pick late, in which the Vikings have to pay cheap at quarterback. The quarterback position is the most important position to play, and usually when you have a top 10 quarterback, you're going to pay him a lot more money than other positions within the top 10, and that is just a straight up fact. And the fact that both the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings picked up great quarterbacks in the late of the first round, they have to pay less money. And to be completely honest with you, as GMs around the National Football Football League, their job is not to buy players, but to buy wins at the cheapest price. And it does include in buying players, but they bought great players at cheap price within the late in this first round draft. And I'm really proud of the Minnesota Vikings and the Cleveland Browns. They did a good job within the first round selections, but I think the winners of the first round definitely belongs to the Cleveland Browns. Now, the next time I'm going to catch you guys is after the end of this year's draft, where I'm going to start giving you guys my grades for each teams for their selections of this year's draft. But today I got to watch tonight rounds 2 and 3. But I'll see you guys next week to give you my grades for each teams for the selections of this year's draft. Thank you for watching today's blog from Pro Football Exclusive. I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.